Welcome to Getcha Rocks Off with Mick Wall, the world's leading rock and metal writer. Each week, he'll unpack stories that you won't find in print. So pour yourself a Jack and Coke and get ready to Getcha Rocks Off. This episode is brought to you by the Getcha Store. For all of your Getcha Rocks Off merch, including t-shirts, face masks, and yep, Hotel Tropicana coffee mugs, head over to getchastore.com.
And today on Getcha Rocks Off,
Getcha Rocks Off,
we're going to be talking about Deep Purple legend, Magnifico guitarist,
Why have you
Rainbow. No, don't
like-
interrupt. Don't interrupt. Rainbow legend and Blackmore's Night visionary,
reaching for that one.
and John doesn't. John, you didn't know he was in Deep Purple, did you, John? You thought
It's
he
almost
just
like
because you were
the
just
intro-
a baby.
the
You
intro
thought he
to
came
this-
along in Rainbow.
The intro to this show, it's almost like you've just piled straight in, as if you forgot to press record on the 20 minutes we've just done.
No. You see. Now that's not the actuality.
Proper podcast. When I was phoned up about this, proper podcast, they have a producer. They don't just have someone pressing a button.
And sometimes not the right
Yeah,
button,
not the right
because I believe in spontaneity and improvisation.
Yeah.
As an artist,
As Ritchie does.
me and Ritchie have a lot in common.
On the bit you'll never hear, the bit we didn't record, when I was speaking about Rainbow on stage, and Ritchie, diddle, 16th century Greensleeves.
Yeah, I wasn't disappointed we didn't keep that, but.
But what we established in the podcast you'll never hear, it's a bit like a great unreleased album.
Yeah, it is. If only you could hear
it's like
it. It was so much
those
better.
sessions, and then 20 years later they get released. The
And people go,
so-and-so
why didn't they
sessions."
release the original?
Yeah, and then you hear it.
The
and
bit
you go,
where
"Oh,
John
okay."
goes on and on and on about how Deep Purple have nothing to do with the Ritchie Blackmore
and then
story.
and then you hear it,
and you go,
oh, that's why they didn't release it.
no, you go, well, Mick was good. When he could get a fucking word in edgeways, he was fine.
You were just going on. It was like the history of Deep Purple. If you want to know the history, if you want to know the history of Deep Purple, I'm sure there are other podcasts where people go, on the 16th of November, 1852.
That's what I was doing, is it?
Well,
really? That's interesting.
I'm exaggerating.
I'm going to release
slightly.
the tapes.
Well, you can't because you didn't fucking record it.
No, I did record it, but only one channel.
Oh, let's guess what channel that was.
Oh, I don't know. I'll go back and have a play.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was before John was born because he's just a boy, But for those of us of a certain golden generation, Deep Purple were a game-changing band because these days it's such a cliche, it's tap-esque, but back then, and this is entirely Ritchie's innovation, was to go, I'm really into classical music, I'm really into rock music, but rock music at a time when it's still the Beatles and the Stones. Only Cream have kind of gone into the realm of improvisation, extended jams.
Yeah.
Blackmore takes that, plus gets his Ludwig van Beethoven wig on, and absolutely goes for it. I mean, John Lord also had a...
Yeah, Lordy. Oh, he loved all that.
He loved a bit of a fugue.
Who came up with Concerto for Group and Orchestra?
Well, that was John Lord.
Lordy.
But Ritchie didn't exactly stand in his way.
No, Ritchie was like, yeah.
And I'll be the conductor.
Yeah, I'll be the conductor and lead. I'm still lead guitarist.
With my black baton.
Yeah.
Because he is none more black.
He is. Well, he's black.
He is more black.
Is that
he
his
is
real
none
name? Is
black
that his
more.
real name? Is that his real name? Is your name your destiny? That's the question.
Well, I'm flummoxed now. My lid has flapped open and my mind is roaming.
Yeah.
Speaking of the astral planes, before we get into the history of Deep Purple,
which we're not getting
side
into.
2 of the 4th album, whatever that was. Ritchie Blackmore, brilliant player. I think underrated. People go, oh, Clapton, Beck,
I don't.
They... Well, people. I'm talking about people.
People that we don't know. People that don't listen to this podcast.
No.
Oh, Clapton, Beck, those people. No.
No, but I'm saying the
Blackmore,
popular...
Page, Iommi. They're the three.
That's us.
That's us, yes. That's why people are here.
Yes. But what I'm saying is, in popular culture, they all go, oh, Hendrix, Clapton, yada, yada, yada. But we know
that Ritchie's better.
That Blackmore, in particular, I mean, Page, fantastic player. I once asked Ritchie Blackmore, what do you think? And I said, I want to throw some guitarists at you. And I mentioned Jimmy Page. And he gave me a great reply, which I think is entirely accurate. I said, I forget who else I asked him. I said, and Jimmy Page. And he went, he said, really good colour. Really good colour. He brings really good colour. And I thought, because technically Page is not, in no way could he, obviously he's not a shredder, but like, you know how Clapton will pick a certain note, and Blackmore was brilliant on these flurry of solos.
What do you call it? We go up and down the neck.
Where Jimmy would be different every time. Some nights dreadful, and other nights
he was
great.
brilliant. He would do those, like Start the Rain song or something, you know, just those chords. And
that weird tuning. He was, Or if you think of... Exactly. Or you think
and
of...
you go, where does that come from?
Song remains the same. Ding, 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 ding. He's more of a kind of a producer.
Which
that Whole Lot of Love?
Black Dog. That was... No, so... which
is
Ritchie,
it true,
Ritchie
by
then
the way,
copied,
what you told me before we
copied.
started? Is it true what you told me that Zeppelin wrote Black Dog about Blackmore?
Everything I say is true.
About Blackmore?
I've got a black dog down here.
Hey, hey, mama, said the way you move, gonna make you... In fact, they don't say Black Dog in the song, do they?
I don't know.
No. So, I just think
Ritchie,
Blackmore is hugely underrated.
Yeah, but this started off, right? Can I say you started that little rant or whatever it was with the words astral plane?
Oh yeah, I was going to get to that.
Okay.
Keep interrupting.
On you go.
So, well, I want to say first of all, he's very he's
underrated.
Underrated as a guitarist.
Not by me.
Not by you, and not by me, but in that general.
I know
cultural,
what you mean. He's not in the conversation.
He's not in the conversation
when that conversation
which
is
sucks.
had.
Totally sucks. So he's this very charismatic figure. He does always dress in black. I mean, I saw a YouTube video in recent years from a contemporary video where he's talking about he has black socks, black underpants, black hanky, everything's black, black curtains.
Yeah.
Probably only drinks black tea, you know, probably only drinks Guinness with the head taken off.
No one knows, do they?
But because he also had this quality that Page shared of being, is there a touch of the supernatural?
Yes.
And when I was buying albums like Who Do We Think We Are or Burn, in those days, amongst people of my age, there was this idea that Page and Blackmore were both so heavily involved in the occult, but they were kind of bitter rival enemies. And
on the astral plane.
On the astral plane, that they would engage in battle. Yeah. Well, I remember some person telling me...
That definitely happened.
Someone told me, Page or Blackmore, whichever one it is, they have it set up so that on the astral plane, they are literally flying through the air with a sword in their hand.
I'm telling you, this is a Dennis Wheatley novel. I've definitely read it. I had this period of reading... Are
you sure it wasn't a Deep Purple biography?
No, it was The Devil Rides Out. Things like that. And there was one which just went... Because The Devil Rides Out was quite good. It was just kind of about a Ouija boards or whatever. But then it goes completely nuts. One of them goes completely nuts because he obviously has to finish the book or something. You know how it is when you're writing and the deadline's looming. You think you've written yourself into a corner. You think, how do I get out of this one?
I never allow those considerations.
The astral plane. That's why at the end of the Dio biography, you'll find... Yeah.
I am not revealing anything that's in that book except to say...
Ronnie Dio's in it, I hope.
Well, yes, of course.
Well, then you're revealing that.
No, well,
you?
Ronnie is fascinating on the subject of Ritchie.
Yes.
And whether it's his playing or this
this
occult aspect to him.
I mean, this adversarial aspect that we're kind of joking about on the astral plane, but Blackmore has a sort of a spiky personality, I think, where his best comes when he's butting up against someone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whether he...
You mean like the great Ali Fraser?
Yeah, you need it.
McEnroe Borg.
You kind of need an opponent, don't you? And maybe that was Page in the early days, but very soon it's people within the band. He wants to, that creative tension is what he seeks out. So he has it with Ian Gillan. Gillan goes, Coverdale comes along, and Glenn Hughes. And then it gets too funky, so he storms off. Well,
one of the reasons Gillan left was because he couldn't stand Blackmore anymore.
Yeah.
And Blackmore could never stand these dilettantish singers that get all the attention.
Yeah.
And the two of them, I think, really did hate each other, Yeah. But Ronnie... and other people, Cozy Powell, I remember telling me that when he was in Rainbow on that tour, the live album came
it was the Rising tour. Yeah.
That was really the classic lineup of Rainbow. Jimmy Bain, Cozy Powell, Ronnie, Ritchie, Tony Carey.
Tony Carey, wasn't it? Yeah, on keyboards. Yeah.
He was saying that there were certain gigs. The Deep Purple used to complain in the 90s when they got back together before Ritchie left for the final time that he wouldn't come out to do encores or he'd be difficult.
Yeah.
Because he said there were times in the 70s when he just would walk out. He wouldn't do the gig, or he'd climb out a window and just he wasn't kidding. This wasn't a show he was putting on to make himself notorious. He couldn't help it. He really was mercurial, a true artist.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah,
still is.
Yeah, still is. Yeah, but so he butts up against Gillan, he butts up against Ronnie Dio, and then he.
Well, the thing I think Coverdale and Glenn Hughes. I think particularly Glenn Hughes, because Coverdale was his baby, wasn't he?
Yeah, he did. I mean, he didn't last. How many albums did they do? Two, three,
two. Burn and Stormbringer.
Yeah, so he doesn't last that long.
And then Ritchie did a track in London with Ronnie, which was that
16th century Greensleeves.
Yeah, because Ronnie, and that was where Ronnie kind of found his focus.
Well, he did.
As well.
It's only been an hour since he locked her in the tower, but the time is brilliant.
You know it, didn't you?
Yeah,
he knows
it.
You've got it imprinted on your heart.
Yeah.
Well, before that, when Ronnie was in Elf, they were like
Elf is brilliant, isn't it?
They were the Electric Elves.
Yeah.
Then they were the Elves, and then they were Elf.
Elf, yeah. Elf, it's cool. That was the age where elves were like slightly mysterious,
Yes, except Elf were like Rod Stewart and the Faces. They were like a good time.
When you
hey
those,
mama, we're gonna dance all night and all that kind of stuff. But he gets together with Ritchie and Ronnie, who is this incredibly well-read guy interested in history and medieval history and science, and it's the perfect match. And so Ronnie finds his meow.
But it's funny because their two personalities are funny. You've got Blackmore, who is this, he's mercurial, but he's also a practical joker. He's very English in many ways.
Very.
His humour, very dry.
Bitter.
Yeah. And then Ronnie, who is a forceful personality, but trapped in the body of, a little guy, a little kind of elfy type guy. So Ritchie's like, I've got to tell you, right, the first, when I realised what a kind of fearsome physical specimen Ritchie Blackmore was we played football against him, Kerrang. When he was back in Deep Purple, and Kerrang had a football team, which I think we've mentioned before, debuted against Iron Maiden in deteriorating circumstances, had a bad second half, as they say. And,
6 beers at half-time later.
Well, could barely stand. So we were offered a game against Deep Purple. It's basically their road crew, and I just remember it was a rainy day. And, of course, Blackmore wasn't there at the start. And there's this whole thing, is he going to turn up, is he not? And I mean, it was brilliant. I have to say it was brilliant. A limo drives up to the side of the pitch, drives over the other football pitches. And a bloke with an umbrella gets out and holds it over him. Ritchie gets out in his football kit. So he looks brilliant. He's standing on the touchline with this umbrella over him because it's pissing down with rain. The game's already started. We're playing, but then he sort of makes this signal and someone comes off and he comes on. And he was a brilliant footballer. I mean, I'm not... He was... I mean, we weren't very... obviously weren't very good. He was really good and, much bigger than you'd expect, much faster than you'd expect, much stronger than you'd expect from seeing him on stage, And he kept going off and coming back on. So he'd stand back under the umbrella for a while when he got his breath back. And then he'd get a gesture and someone else would have to come off and he'd come back on. But it was very funny.
Well, that same period, something almost similar happened with me, except I'll preface this by pointing out that whenever you talk about the Kerrang football team, I was never there.
No.
I wasn't in the team.
No.
I only think I found out about the team in our conversations all these years later, because by then, although I'd been an extraordinarily athletic young man, by the time I got to my mid to late 20s, I had moved on to other pleasures that incapacitated my physical prowess.
Yeah. Well, you would have been quite good because there was quite a lot of fighting, which you would have been.
So listen. So what happens is the reform. This is 84, 85, 85. The reformed Deep Purple.
Perfect strangers.
Didn't they used to call the Deep Purple football team Perfect Street Rangers? No, Ian Gillan used to
been very
make
jokes. Maybe they did. I can't remember now.
Anyway,
I really can't remember.
So, sorry, there's a dog. Oh, he's over there.
Here.
Okay. I'm asked to do a kind of a preview piece on the fact that Purple are coming to headline Nebworth.
Right,
Nebworth,
they did,
this legendary 100,000.
Legendary venue. Who'd you get? Mick Wall. That's the way it went.
That's the way it went. Yeah. So they said it's going to be a phoner with Ritchie, just, like one of those things.
Phoner.
We're really looking forward to it.
The most hated form of any interview.
In those days, definitely, because it was all face-to-face.
Yeah.
Phoner was what...
Horrible.
That was what the divs that weren't allowed in the room got.
would do. And always, because the technology wasn't there, it was difficult to record. And
you used to record yours, did you? So... it's going to be a 15-minute phone with Ritchie. It's going to be great, blah-de-blah. And except we know it's him, so it probably won't go exactly.
It probably won't be great. That's what you're thinking. It won't be 15 minutes, and it won't be. It could be. Probably what it's going to be. It's either going to be 1 minute or it's going to be 3 hours.
You're definitely on the scent here, but you'll never get. I mean, this is so. I'm trying to ring him and I can't get through, and it's like he's going to ring you back. And
where was he? Can you remember where he was?
Oh, he was at home in
Connecticut. Yeah, Connecticut he lives. Because it has a nightly connection, doesn't it? The Court of Connecticut.
Does it?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's not happening. And I'm thinking, this is a drag. And then about 3 hours later, I get a phone call from whoever the PR was. And she says, the thing is... Ritchie doesn't really want to do this on the phone. He will only do it face to face. And I went, okay, but he's in America, right? And she went, yeah. I said, the deadline for this is like a Thursday.
Yeah.
It might even be a Friday.
Yeah.
I think it was a Friday.
Yeah.
And, Kerrang was week. No, Kerrang wasn't weekly in those days. But whatever the deadline was, because it wasn't weekly, we had to have that story in by Monday morning so that it could be ready for the issue that came out in time for
deadlines.
I said, what do you say? She said, well, he says if you'll go to him in New York, he'll meet you and we'll do the interview there. And I'm like, it's Friday afternoon. I've got to get the story in for Monday.
Yeah.
She said, well, that's the only way he's going to do it.
Yeah.
So I
She
rang
got Malcolm to do it.
Jeff Barton, and he said, yeah, go for it. Just do a big interview. You're going to meet him face to face.
Do big, yeah.
So I'm like,
go
okay.
big or go home.
Literally.
As they say.
So first thing Saturday morning, I'm on the plane going to New York. It's all very sudden. And get there. I've got this wrong. It was a Friday. I literally put the phone down and run to Heathrow. And
that's more like it.
No, that's exactly what happened. And then you get there, and it's like 8 o'clock at night over there, but for you it's 1 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I had to go to a certain hotel.
You get that cab from JFK into the city. It takes forever.
On a Friday night,
yeah,
can you imagine?
Jesus.
So I'm sweating, I'm stressed, and I get to the hotel and I check in. I'm like, is there any message? No. Has there been a Mr. Blackmore? No. So I've got the number of his manager or whoever it is, some slave. And he says, oh no, Ritchie, we'll meet you in the bar of the hotel at 10 o'clock. Okay, so I get myself ready, get it all together. I'm in that bar at 9:45, waiting. 10 o'clock comes, nothing. 10:15, nothing. 10:30, nothing. And the thing is, even though it's a Friday night, it's fairly empty, this bar. Probably because it's Friday night and you're in New York and there's a million places to go.
Yeah.
But I'm worried if I go, because no mobile phone, so I'm worried if I go to my room to ring this bloke and say he's not here.
Ritchie walks in, sees you're not there, goes, fuck Mick Wall.
So I go to the guy behind the bar. I say, look, I'm meeting someone here. I'm going to go to my room.
You won't miss him. Very tall.
And
dressed in black.
Black, yes.
Dressed in black.
He said, don't worry, blah, blah, blah. So I run to my room, ring the guy, and the guy goes, Ritchie's there now. I'm like, what? He goes, you better hurry. Ritchie's there now. Fuck. So I slammed down the phone, elevated, in the bar, nothing. I'm like to the guy, did someone come in? He said, nope. I said, oh, I was told he was here. Someone came in. He said, no, nothing.
Did you say, is there another bar?
No, it was, no, I didn't. Fuck off. I may have done. I probably did. I'm very thorough. You
would have got your people to see if there was another bar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there. It's now gone 11. Oh, dear. I'm like, fuck's sake. So I go to I'm going to go back to my room and ring them again.
Yeah, if he comes
anybody, please, here's my room.
Bloke.
Ring me in my,
Yeah.
So I go back to my room. I ring this guy and he goes, Ritchie's really pissed off with you. I'm like, but why? I'm here. He goes, Ritchie waited for you for an hour and you didn't show up. And I'm like, I've been sat there the whole... He goes, I don't think this is going to work. I'm like, what? He goes, I'll call you back. And he hangs up. I'm like,
who is this bloke?
Something manager. I don't know. So about 12:30 at night, I'm sort of in bed with my...
tucked up.
It's like 5:30 in the morning for me. I mean, in those days, I only slept once a week, you know. So,
but now is
nevertheless,
the time.
now's my time. Yeah. I'm thinking, oh God, I'm so fucked. Just that whole feeling of confusion and failure.
Yeah.
And the phone goes, and it's the bloke, and he goes, okay, here's what's going to happen. Ritchie came to you last night, and you weren't there. So now you're going to have to go to Ritchie. And I went, where is he? He went, Connecticut. And I'm like, how do I get there? He goes, you get a train.
Yeah.
I said, you want me to get a train? He goes...
In America?
Yeah.
Do they have trains?
He goes, you go to Grand Central Station, and you get a train, and he tells you what to do. And I'm thinking, oh, no,
You're like, what now?
Plus, have I got any money? Because in those days, we weren't... Well, you were fucking... folding, you were.
Was I?
Oh, actually, not in 85. You're probably still at college, weren't you? Yeah. No. Well, So, okay. He goes, and the other thing is when you get to Connecticut, there's going to be a football match and you're going to play in it. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, I didn't bring my boots.
Yeah, I don't have any kit. And he goes, don't worry, we'll get you some kit.
Yeah.
At this
you
point,
should have said, I want Adidas Gazelles.
I only play with the number 11 on my back.
Yeah, and I only play with Adidas.
My lucky Adidas.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, I've got to go to I've got to find Grand Central Station.
Yeah.
I've got to get a train to Connecticut.
That's not the hard part.
No, but have you ever been to Grand Central Station?
Yeah, it's massive. Yeah. Once you're there, but you can't miss it. That's what I'm saying.
No, you get there. But when you get there, what do you do? Where do you go?
It's really confusing. You have to...
Very confusing. excuse me,
Yeah.
what are you on? And also it's full of pimps and
what
drug
do you
addicts.
want? Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
You're going to get killed. If you hang around Grand Central Station looking like you have no idea what you're doing, you're going to wind up on 42nd Street pimping your ass.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Making couple bucks.
Yeah.
So
you could still be there.
And also...
You could be the oldest rent boy in New York. A rent man. It's not a big demand for rent men.
Rent pensioner.
Yeah.
You see, no demand for rent men. But when you get to, like, you know, whatever the equivalent of a MILF is.
Yeah. A gilf, a grandfather I'd like to go out with around the back of Grand Central Station.
Grandfather I'd like to give $5 to and get him to gum me in the alley. Yeah, that was a possible career.
That was what was going to happen if you didn't get the train to Connecticut.
And then when I get to Connecticut, I've got to play fucking football with this guy. It's like, for fuck's sake. I was only supposed to be a 10-minute phoner.
Yeah. How has my life turned into this fucking nightmare? Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So I don't sleep because I'm so stressed about this whole thing. And in the morning, the bloke rings me and he goes, "Have you left the hotel yet?" I said, "No." He said, "Okay." He goes, we'll send a car. I thought, thank God.
About time.
And then when I'm in the car, the other thought occurs, where am I going? I don't know where Connecticut is.
Yeah.
They could be driving me to the edge of the ocean to tip me in the sea.
That's slightly paranoid of you, though.
You will be. Listen, if you just spent the 24 hours I had on a plane, taxi, weird hotel bar, he waited for you for an hour, you know.
But he didn't. He wasn't even there.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Because he's in Connecticut. How did he get to Connecticut? That's what you should have been asking.
No, I did ask.
Can't I go with Ritchie? Because he's obviously here, because I've just fucking missed him.
So, anyway, I'm in this limo and I get to some place in Connecticut and it's now Saturday night. And they didn't drag me to the game. They had the game without me. Thank God.
Much like the Kerrang football team.
Much like the Kerrang football team, I wasn't involved in the actuality.
Yeah, when the team list went up on the office notice board, not selected, wall M.
Not even in the squad.
Available but not selected.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I'm told, I don't know how I learned this, but it's eventually conveyed to me that, okay, so you're not going to go to the football, but Ritchie every Saturday night goes to the same restaurant. So we're going to send you to this restaurant in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And I'm in
You've
the
been
car.
better off hiring a private detective at this point.
I'm saying to the bloke in the car like a kidnap victim trying to bond. I'm like, so when we get there, will you you'll be waiting for me, will you?
Because I've got to get back to New York, buddy.
To get a plane to go back to... I'm getting the plane that night to go back to England.
That's what I mean.
This is stressful.
You ain't getting it from Connecticut.
No.
Yeah.
So I've got it. So I'm like, so you'll wait for... He goes, no, I don't know. My job is just to drop you. I don't know what happens after that. So I'm like, oh, great. So 2 hours later, we pull up at some restaurant in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And I get out the car and as I'm walking to the restaurant, he drives off. I'm like, oh.
Well, Ritchie?
No, the driver of
that
this
would have been brilliant.
So now
if that was the last thing you saw, was Ritchie pulling out of the parking lot.
With a football,
tapping his watch.
A football in one hand and a Ouija board in the other.
Watch.
Yeah. Time do you call this?
Yeah.
I waited for you.
I always eat at 6.
So I go, it was like that. Yeah. So I get in the restaurant and I say to them, is there a table for Mr. Blackmore? You know, God, he'll be like the bloke in the bar. No.
Yeah.
And they went, there is, he's not here yet, but if you... And so I sit at this table, and of course, half an hour, and eventually I see a car in the parking lot pull up, and out gets Blackmore, plus whoever his bird was at the time, and a couple of other people. There's a party of 4, you know. And they come in, he sits opposite me, and we did a fantastic interview.
Yeah.
He was just hilarious, but without ever cracking a smile, always deadpan. Did
he say that he'd been in New York? Or?
No, it wasn't even mentioned.
No.
Didn't even
he wasn't there.
He was, because he wasn't there. He was laughing.
Yeah.
Laughing at the idiot journalist.
Yeah.
And then we had a meal, we did the interview, and then there was a car that came and picked me up and took me straight to the airport to get the plane home. but he was delightful company. And what struck me was how intelligent he was.
Yeah. I think that's partly it, because I think, we both know when you've been on the road, especially for the years and years he's been on the road, the boredom factor is incredibly high. And if you're not the kind of person who's endlessly entertained by drinking, parties, whatever,
that gets old really, really quickly. It gets old quick,
yeah. And I think that, you get this sense of ennui, as they say, and you're just bored a lot of the time. If you're clever like him, then what do? You wind people up for your own entertainment. You find ways of, you could almost see him when I've got this phoner book. I wonder if I could get the guy to come to New York. It's that. Oh, yeah. I'm bored. I'm bored, and I'm powerful, and I can.
I don't really want to do this. So I've got to tell him to come and meet me.
The other week, two of my great sort of tales of going to rock stars' houses. Last year or year before, or whatever.
Well, with you, it's not so much going to rock. You live in a house surrounded by rock stars.
Yeah. Okay. So. Do you want to go and interview Russ Ballard?
Right.
So, yeah, definitely.
Since you've been gone.
Exactly, since you've been gone.
Since you've been
all
gone.
the other stuff he'd written,
He also wrote, God gave rock
and roll to you. So, okay, he lives in Hertfordshire, which is, again, it's not too far, it's a drive, So go out to...
Did you drive there from your mansion?
I did to his mansion.
On one of those
it was
mountain...
Like mansion to mansion transport. There's different roads and everything.
Well, secret roads.
Yeah, you don't have to go on the normal roads.
And were you on one of those, what do they call those bikes that you
penny
drive
farthing.
Hey? No, not a penny farthing. No, they're motorised. What do you call them? You see the farmers on.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, like a... The thing Aussie fell off it, didn't he?
Yeah, he
quad
did.
Bike.
Don't tell me you haven't got a fleet of quad bikes.
Fleet to Hertfordshire quad bike.
And as you're going this way, you see Brian May going that way.
I'll come on the... Russ, I'm coming on the quad bike. Yeah.
He's like, that gives me an idea for a song.
Yeah. So anyway,
on my bike.
Anyway, go to Russ Ballard's house. Obviously we joke about research. I did a bit of research because I didn't know.
Sorry to interrupt. But apart from the great rockers, we know Russ Ballard for. Russ also wrote a lot of ballads.
He wrote Russ ballads.
He did.
He also wrote. What was the big he wrote a big hit for Hot Chocolate. Not You Sexy Thing.
So You Win Again?
Yes, So You Win Again. Anyway, let me tell you. So I go to Russ's house.
He offered that to Ritchie. He offered that to Ritchie.
Well, let me tell you this fucking story. Jesus. So I go to that.
Welcome to my world.
So go to his house. It's sort of a misty morning. We're sitting
in a misty morning.
And I couldn't work out whether just Russ lived there, or because we were sitting in this lovely conservatory. Horses in the paddock. I can see his swimming pool. All of it. Turns out it wasn't just Russ living there. But
you could have ridden a horse.
So we start talking. And he was such an interesting guy. He grew up around there. He's talking about his childhood, and he was like Ritchie, was really good at football until he went. One day he going out with these lads. This back in the sort of early 60s or whatever, when he was a kid. And you used to be able to just go out and roam back then. You'd say to your mum in the morning, I'm going out with my mates. And you'd come back at 6 o'clock. No one knew where you'd been.
My mum used to literally open the front door and kick
me
out.
Yeah.
I don't want to see you for 8 hours.
Yeah, come back. But it was essentially safe, except on this day, he was out with these kids and they'd taken an air pistol out into the woods to mess about with. And he was shot in the eye with it.
That's why I used to wear the glasses.
Yeah. And he was in Moorfield, the eye hospital. He told me this whole story. It was a terrible story with bandages around. He couldn't see out of either eye. It was like bandages around his face for weeks on end because they were trying to save his eyesight.
Wow.
So this long story, and that sort of cost him his football ambitions because he went blind in that eye, and it affects your vision and your balance and all sorts of things.
What if you go blind?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've heard that. I've heard that.
Actually, what does happen? Again, he was very interested in this. What does happen is your other eye adapts brilliantly, and if you just cover up your eye now, you lose all your depth perception and all that sort of. But eventually, your eye will compensate. Your other eye will compensate, which is what happened to him, but never quite enough for him to play football again. But so he learned the guitar, and his he was in that band. They were called something like 4+2 or something. And his first hit was Concrete and Clay.
Oh, wow.
Which is that song, beneath my feet begins to crumble.
He didn't write that, did he?
He didn't write it. He played guitar and sang on it, I think.
Wow.
And then
the
guy who did write it started getting him to write, and that was how he worked out. And we're sitting in his conservatory, and he's got his guitar, and he's going, "Oh, do you know this one? Do you know that one?" He's doing all these. So it was a great day, really interesting. One of those people you interview, and you think, will he be interesting, or will we be? No, he goes, "Do you want to come to lunch?" We went down into the town and had lunch. He's telling the stories. He's talking about the residuals you get and like how much money he makes, basically.
From the songs?
Yeah, from the songs. And he goes, obviously God gave rock and roll to you. That became massive when it was in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He goes, that just went through the roof when it was in
Was that the Kiss version in Bill and Ted?
First of all, yeah, I think it was Kiss in Bill and Ted. Argent did it first, and he was obviously in Argent and had written it for Argent.
Right.
But then he said, what you got to do, he goes, you got to write a song with New York in the title if you want to make money. And he'd written a song called New York Groove.
He wrote New York Groove,
he wrote
of course.
Yeah. He said...
back in the New York Groove.
Yeah. He said, advertisers... He goes, I've just had a check. He goes, 250,000 euros. It's been used in Germany on some football advert.
Really?
Because it's got New York in the title. And advertisers, they're always looking for, that... So... We do all this, and we go back. So we then go back to the house again. He goes, "Do you want to come in the piano room?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's gonna show me how he wrote "Since You've Been Gone," which was amazing.
Fantastic.
So he goes. So I wrote it at the piano, which you wouldn't have necessarily thought. And he starts playing at the piano, but it makes perfect. And he said, "I get the same old dreams, same time every night, fall to the ground." And he's showing me the version that he wrote, and he goes, "But." What Ritchie did brilliantly, because someone else recorded it in the interim. It had been recorded before Rainbow recorded it. And I can't remember who it was that did it. But so he goes, what Ritchie did brilliantly was turn the piano thing into that great guitar riff, and made it a massive hit. And he said that happened quite often. And then he does the hot chocolate one. He goes, da 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 da. So you win again, And it was just it was like a masterclass on how to do this stuff. And then he did a whole album with America. You remember America?
Yeah, Horse with No
Horse
Name.
With No Name. Well, America done Horse with No Name and that Ventura Highway and all of that, and had then gone into a kind of fallow period where they couldn't write. So they got Russ Ballard, and he did a couple of albums with it. And he wrote, "You could do magic,
really?
You could do anything you want," which is another massive hit.
He was kind of Desmond Child before Desmond Child.
He's going through all these songs he wrote. But anyway, at the end he goes, I'll tell you when it was. It was just when Rainbow, they did that tour 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Or was it maybe longer than that, maybe 5 years ago now? It was then. That's what I meant, because he goes... someone from Blackmore's office called up and said, "We're doing the O2. Do you want to come along?" And he said, "Oh, that's nice of Ritchie to remember, So, and it was like your story. He goes down to the O2 and Russ Ballard, who? You're not. But he knows someone on the door or something. So turns out he gets in and he's on the side of the stage waiting for the sound check, And he sees Blackmore look up, and Blackmore goes, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "Well, you invited me down." He goes, like, no, I didn't. Don't think I did. He goes, anyway, he goes, "Oh, I suppose you want to do Since You've Been Gone." And Russ Ballard's like, "I don't want to do any of it."
You asked me to come.
You asked me to. I suppose you want to do Since You've Been Gone. So he says, "All right, well, yeah, okay, you come on when we do that." And then he goes, "But we don't play all of it. We just play a bit of it, right?" And so Russ Ballard...
Why did they just play a bit of it?
I don't know, because they did it in a medley or something. I did see the show, and I think he's right. I think they kind of did this medley bit where they maybe did I Surrender and... it's
Wouldn't
Ritchie,
it be better just
Ritchie
to do
never does what you want him to do, does he?
Do the 20-minute widdly in a medley.
Yeah.
Give us the hits.
So he goes... They start doing Since You've Been Gone, and Ritchie sort of beckons him out, and Russ goes out, and he says, he starts playing, and he goes... And then I realised my guitar isn't turned on. And you never know with Blackmore. He's got such a dry sense of humour whether that's him just having fun or what, you know. Russ Ballard didn't mind at all. You know, he's that sort of lovely personality where he just thought it was funny.
And I think also we've talked about this in other podcasts where, you know, the thing that makes a particular artist brilliant is sometimes the thing that, I mean, Axl is the great example, but is the thing that also makes them impossible to be around.
Yeah.
But Blackmore, his references, musical references, are so broad. And it's not just I love medieval or I love classical or I love whatever it might be, you know, heavy rock or something. It is completely full spectrum because all these guys grew up in an era where there wasn't heavy rock and there weren't albums. It was popular song. And... you know, just to backtrack a little bit, you know, so this precipitates this huge falling out with Ian Gillan because Ritchie, for a laugh...
Is this the first time or the second time? Because they fall out again, don't they?
It's the first time. Yeah. And Blackmore just is a contrarian. You know, Gillan's a real kind of meat and potatoes, and Blackmore is, no, I'll have the truffle sauce and the caviar guitar, you know. So it all just ends badly. And then second time, same thing. Ritchie is just sending them all mad. He won't come out to do an encore. You know, all this stuff that if he'd come out and done the encore, we would never be talking about that show.
Yeah, yeah.
But he doesn't. And so suddenly it's... They don't realise he's actually burnishing the brand in many ways. They're just like, does not make sense. Crowd, encore... Yeah. Ritchie, you're letting us down. No, I'm creating a legend.
It's funny you said that because I remember doing a story about the California Jam quite recently as well.
Where Deep Purple, that was the first time the Coverdale and Glenn Hughes lineup.
Yeah, and Ritchie did exactly the same thing at that stage. Smashed his guitar. First of all, refused to go on stage because he concocted some argument about the billing. And then when he did go on, was told there's someone coming on after you. I can't remember who it was, but... you know, the turnaround times are quick. So he smashes his guitar up on the stage, sets fire to it, breaks an amplifier or something, causes absolute chaos to the point where he's almost arrested after the show. But it's what everyone remembers.
Exactly.
It's the bit everyone remembers.
That's right. He did nearly get arrested. I think they had to skedaddle
they had
super fast.
Yeah, one of those ones where he's pushed out in a flight case or something. You know?
And can you imagine David Coverdale, his first big show in America?
Because there's 300,000 people at this thing.
And here's Blackmore going nuts. It must have been like, I don't get it.
What is this?
Isn't this our crowning moment? No. This is the moment where I'm going to be really pissed off.
Yeah. And this is what he was brilliant at.
And then the same thing, not the same thing, but similarly with Dio. And it wasn't just Ronnie. It was just most noticeable with Ronnie because that seemed to be almost like self-harm.
Yeah. Well, I remember interviewing Graham Bonnet when he was appointed to be the singer in Rainbow, and he said literally his first introduction, he hadn't met any of them. He'd met Ritchie maybe. Go to the same as you, right? Go to this studio. A car will pick you up. You know, Ritchie will be there. Walks into the studio, and the first person he sees walking past him is Ronnie Dio, like fucking swearing and
really
yeah and they'd just left the band,
wow,
just had the news from Ritchie.
Well, I mean, Ritchie having rejected Deep Purple, the group that he'd made famous, because Glenn Hughes and David Coverdale want to go in a funkier direction, which to remind people in 75, 76 that was very much the norm. I mean, the Stones were doing Miss You, Elton was doing Philadelphia Free, Bowie did Young Americans, Rod Stewart did Do You Think I'm... just disco and funk was a...
Kiss did I Was Made for Loving You.
I was made for loving you, baby.
Which was obviously the best iteration of funk.
Written by Desmond Child, who learned at the knee of Russ Ballard.
As we call him, the American Russ Ballard.
That's right. I mean, it's very similar. Desmond Child, Russ Ballard. There's something
about
there's a Venn diagram.
There is.
So, having walked out of Deep Purple, because they're not maintaining that kind of neoclassical thing. Prog, if you like. He gets Dio in, the perfect foil. The two of them wrote great stuff. Kill the King.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
Well,
stuff.
Stargazer, absolute classic.
Stargazer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Rising's a great album.
It's a great album.
Tarot Woman.
And so is, On Stage. And Long Live Rock and Roll, another great record.
Yeah.
And, but what's sticking in his craw by 1978, was it, when Dio left? Foreigner have come along.
Yeah.
Boston have come along.
Yes.
And these guys are all over American
Kansas
radio.
had a massive hit, didn't they? Wayward Son.
Absolutely. But I mean, I think Foreigner in particular stuck in his craw because, Mick Jones was British.
Yeah.
He was like the Blackmore of Foreigner.
Yeah.
And he'd also, same age as Blackmore, same session background. And yet he's selling millions in America and having huge hits. And Rainbow were pretty much a flop.
See, I mean, maybe this is the interesting thing, is the one thing Blackmore couldn't do was write those sort of songs, the Russ Ballard, the Mick Jones, those kind of songs.
Well, through Roger Glover, because he wouldn't say it directly, but through Roger Glover, who was producing the next Rainbow album, said to Ronnie, Ritchie wants you to, do something that can get on the radio. I think that's probably why they wrote Long Live Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
But then Ritchie had a great idea to do Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow?
Oh, God.
Yeah, can you imagine?
That.
And I remember talking to Ronnie a couple of years before he died, and we were talking about this, and he was very, very tactful, but he said, if you want to know why, we split, he said, you've only got to look at what Rainbow did next. He said, I wasn't interested in writing songs like that. And in fact, what Rainbow did next, when they headlined Donington, I think in 1980, if you go on YouTube, you'll actually see they do like a 10-minute version of Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow with Graham Bonnet singing.
Oh, God, yeah.
And apparently they did record it, but didn't release it. I think wiser heads prevailed. And that's when they went to Russ Ballard and basically said, got any hits we can record? Yeah. And he did do a tremendous... I mean, the guitar on Since You've Been Gone is fantastic.
If you hear the original version, you'll hear how much Blackmore changed it. I mean, the tune is the same, but the arrangement is completely different. And it's the arrangement that really changed it. And also then Russ also wrote I Surrender, which, again... because the singer's different, it sort of almost doesn't sound like Rainbow again.
It could be any generic 80, Journey.
Probably Foreigner, era. That sort of thing. Yeah.
Who wrote All Night Long?
I don't know who wrote All Night Long. Don't know.
Okay.
Maybe it was Russ. Russ probably wrote everything.
But again, he seems to, with Since You've Been Gone. I mean, Bonnet lasted one album.
Well, Bonnet was very funny. The time I interviewed Bonnet was very funny about what it was like to work with Blackmore. And again, no ill feelings at all, because it made his career. He was an Australian guy who was basically a blue-eyed soul singer. Yeah. Had been in a band called Marbles, I think, something like that.
Yeah,
Marbles.
Absolutely, yeah.
So he'd never sung rock, but had this, discovered via Ritchie, had this great rock voice, changed his career, changed his life, gave him a completely different life. So I think he's very grateful for that. But describing the experience of being with Blackmore and the insanity around that. And I think was it Donington where he cut his hair, or it was one show where he cut his hair?
Famously.
It was Donington, yeah.
Because Ritchie had specifically asked him to grow his hair.
grow your hair. He said, Bonnet said, I just got fed up and went out and got my hair cut. And he said Blackmore hadn't seen him till they got on stage, and all he could feel was this death stare behind him. And I think for all the joking about Blackmore, if you felt that death stare, you knew the end was nigh.
Don Airey, who was in Don Airey's been in everybody's band, isn't he? But he was when his time in Rainbow. I remember him telling me about. He said Ritchie had this. On stage, it's almost nonchalant, not nonchalant, but he's not one of the gang. He's just into his own thing. He's this impenetrable aura. He said, but he watched everything, every single thing. He said, but he could be very funny as well. He said, for instance, one of the things I used to do every night was during one of Blackmore's big solos, he used to lean back into the amps to the point where the amps were tilting. He said, but he would always have two roadies on the other side of the amps holding the amps up, so that he would be, but you wouldn't see them from the audience. Yeah. So he'd be tilting back, and you see the amp going, this huge amp, all the way, and people go, no. He said, but one night he did it, and whatever had happened, there'd been some emergency, a cable had gone or something, and the two roadies were off doing that, and they weren't there. Oh, no. So he's leaning back on the amp, leaning back on the amp. The amp starts to tilt, and then there's no one there, so it just starts to fall.
Christ.
He goes, and as Ritchie is literally about to hit the deck, he looks at Don and he just points at him, your turn. Wow. So Don had to fill in for 10 minutes on the keyboards while people came and picked up a very put out Mr. Blackmore and dusted him down and sent him out there again. Yeah. But anyway, so Ritchie, he wants success, but he wants to be different. He doesn't get the recognition he deserves as one of the greatest guitarists that ever lived. Not in the same way. I mean, Deep Purple never had that thing that Zeppelin had, which was this kind of resurgence of interest. Yeah. They're bigger now than when they were alive. When they were playing. Yeah. Sabbath had it. Zeppelin had it. Purple have never had it. I remember trying to talk Metal Hammer about 10 years ago into doing something on Deep Purple. And I had to say, but they were Lars Ulrich's favourite group. But this, but that, Yngwie, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And no, there was no name recognition at all, So there's all this going on. He gets Rainbow, he gets it all his own way. But it wasn't just Ronnie, I mean, he recorded the album with Ronnie and the members of Elf. And then before they can begin touring, he sacks them all apart from Ronnie. They do Rainbow Rising. Yeah. That group never record another record together. True. Yeah. Jimmy Bain is just fired at the end of the world tour that On Stage came out of. Yeah. And by the time you get to Long Live Rock and Roll, Ritchie plays most of the bass on that. Bob Daisley came in right at the end.
Oh yeah, Bomber Bob. There you go.
Tony Carey played on a little bit of it because he wanted rid of him as well.
Yeah, he was being constantly sort of fired, stroke re-employed.
Yeah. Ritchie couldn't stand him. Apparently he was a very loud American, and everything that Ritchie found a bore. But every time they tried to replace him, it didn't work out. Yeah. So he ended up doing the beginning of the album, and then they got rid of him. And then you get Graham Bonnet, and they have this huge success with Since You've Been Gone. And you think, okay, this might not be my favourite version of Rainbow, but you can see what he's doing. And Bonnet's gone after one album. Yeah. Suddenly it's Bobby Rondinelli on drums. It's
Jolene Turner.
Jolene Turner on vocals.
Here comes Joe.
Probably Don Airey on keyboards.
Probably was, yeah.
And Roger Glover on back from Deep Purple. I mean, it just is this revolving door. Yeah. And then that goes out the window, and he reforms Deep Purple, who do have a big American hit. Because this is the thing that drove Ritchie mental, was Rainbow never had a look-in chart-wise in America. Deep Purple come back, and Perfect Street Rangers becomes a top 10 album. And then that goes south with House of Blue Light, the follow-up. Oh, yeah. Because it wasn't as good. And also the novelty. I remember Rod Smallwood, Iron Maiden's manager. He said something very, I thought, astute to me at the time. What we call the Mark II lineup of Purple got back together and did Nebworth and had the big comeback album, Perfect Strangers. He said, the day you reform is the day you cease to be a legend. Yeah, that's true. A lot of truth in that. So there was this huge attention to Perfect Strangers. But then the follow-up, it was like, yeah. And now they've got some guy who isn't Ritchie Blackmore, haven't they? And they're just a band, Yeah, well, they're a classic band. So it's a jukebox, it's vintage. Yeah. They keep doing new albums that no one cares. Yes. But they've not got Ritchie. To me, it's not. I wouldn't go and see them because they've not got Ritchie. Tommy Bolin, who replaced Ritchie for the final Purple album, I don't think he was obviously a particularly good fit for Purple.
No, but I'm talking about
he was an amazing guitarist.
The guy they've got now.
Steve Morse.
Steve Morse, that's it.
Well, again, a very, very...
I'm sure he's very good, yeah. But ain't Ritchie, is it?
No, it ain't Ritchie. No. There's your answer.
Yeah.
But what does Ritchie do? You know, he could have ridden that wave. I mean, before Ronnie died, I remember another good friend of ours saying that there were gigantic offers on the table from Japan for the Dio lineup of Rainbow to get back together. No album, nothing, great. Just because they were huge in Japan. I mean, they go and play 20 dates there, where most groups are going to do 2, you know. And Ritchie wasn't. Ronnie would have done it, I'm sure. Ritchie, no, just not. I'm not looking back.
Yeah.
And of course, as you mentioned, he did get a version of Rainbow back.
He did with the guy who
sounded like Dio to me.
Well, he sounded like all of them. That was the amazing thing. He was really good in that he could sort of do all of their voices.
Right.
Like he sounded a bit like Dio, but he sounded a bit like Graham Bonnet, and he sounded a bit like Joe Lynn Turner.
When he sang
those songs,
because they did a comeback track, which of course I can't remember, but I remember hearing it, thinking this is great. It sounds like Ronnie singing, you know.
Yeah. I think he's Argentinian or something. The guy who did it.
You're not a friend of the singer in Journey, is he?
He might be.
Found him on YouTube.
Your geographical confusion over the singer in Journey we've been into before. He's definitely from South America, someone like that. But and the show was great. I saw the show in Birmingham, and Ritchie's wife came out and did backing vocals. Candice Knight, which is a great name,
isn't it?
Yeah, Candice Knight.
Blackmore's Knight. I love that.
Yeah, Blackmore's Knight.
And was she dressed as a knight?
No, she was dressed as a girl.
Was she dressed as Maid Marian?
Sort of, yeah, kind of.
Because she's a beautiful woman.
She's a Renaissance woman.
And she's got a great voice.
Yeah, she has. And I've never seen the Blackmore's Night show. But again, Blackmore is so dry and so tongue-in-cheek. It's hard to work out what bits of it he really likes and what bits he just thinks this is just a laugh, you know.
Well, I remember on Classic Rock, in the early couple of years of Classic Rock magazine, and we would send people to review them, and it was great. The tickets would have things on, would say, if you want to, I forget the wording, but it was like if you want to come in period costume, that's encouraged.
Ritchie comes out, he's got all the kind of lace up boots and all the rest of it.
He looks like the Witchfinder General with a big buckle on his hat.
I was going to say, it looks like the Robin Hood in the sort of 1940s film.
Or Vincent Price as the Witchfinder General.
That's what he looks like. Yeah.
And the beautiful Maid Marian.
Yeah, he's doing the singing.
Yeah. And who, honestly, of all the amazing rock guitarists, of all the amazing rock figures, and rock is blessed and honoured to have so many fucking lunatics in it, and marvellous characters, whether it's Lemmy or Axl or whoever it is. Here is Ritchie. Who of them, other than Ritchie Blackmore, would want to go medieval on your ass? Ritchie's gone medieval on your ass, motherfucker.
Yeah.
And he ain't kidding. I mean, he's probably been doing this longer now.
Oh, yeah, they've done a lot of albums, haven't they? Yeah.
And
probably because he can't fire the singer. Because otherwise he won't get his tea.
But they make great music.
They do. No,
they make great music.
Yeah.
And I would love for you and me to go the next time they play. Yeah. But in costume, obviously.
Yeah. Well, so you come round, wait for me in the lobby. I'll meet you down there.
I'm going to come as Friar Tuck.
Yeah, good.
And you could come as Little John.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun.
Anyway, Ritchie, we love you.
We salute you.
Totally salute you. Yeah. You are fucking God.
Yeah. Cheers, Rich.
Cheers, Rich. And Candice.
And Candice, yeah, as well. And Ronnie and all the guys.
And all the guys.
All those guys.
Yeah, all right, that will do.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a review, share it with a friend, or plain old subscribe wherever you listen to it. To get you some conversation online, follow us on Twitter at GetchaPod. Until next time.
This has been a No Filter Media production.
Say what you want.